It's time for today's pre-show of our N10-009 Network Plus Study Group. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. In about 10 minutes, top of the hour, we will be getting things started. This is the pre-show where I check on things, make sure cameras are working, which they are, make sure my Cylons are running. And see, immediately, I see that I don't have any lights on my panel. What did I do? I must have closed it. I did close it. Let's try that. It works so much better when you turn things on. So now it's working. So now we got pretty lights. This is why we have a pre-show. Pretty lights are good. Mic is good. Let's bring the chat room back up. Hello, chat room. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. I know it's always something. There's too many switches in here. There are too many buttons to push. It is all running very well as long as all the buttons are pushed. It's really just a simple thing. It's really amazing it works all, isn't it? We can pause ourselves up here. I don't need to watch myself. In the meantime, you could join us by going to that URL on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and you can put your virtual pin in our virtual pin cushion, I guess you could call it. This is our studio rundown right here. This is the studio setup. So anytime we're shooting video, anytime we're doing a live stream, or I'm just hanging out, I'm usually here in this chair. I'm usually doing it. These days we're very, very busy. There's a lot going on right now. There's just tons of content being created. So there's things everywhere from many places that are all happening all at the same time. So I'm spending a lot of time in this chair. And it's all good. I like it when we're finally in a groove and things are happening. It's when there's a gap where there's nothing going on that I always tend to worry. So far, we haven't hit that. So far, that's not been a problem. So we'll just keep things moving as we sit here. Thanks for being here, by the way. We got lots going on. We're going to do all Network Plus today. I love Network Plus. I love networking. I love protocols. As many of you know, I'm a former systems engineer for Network General. So packet capture, network management, network analysis. Is it the network? Is it the application? It's at this point, it's in my blood. And knowing this content positions you very well for IT security in the future, if that's where you want to go. So that's why I think this is sort of this area of technology that is sort of a universal truth. Like everything starts and ends with the network. And it didn't used to always be that way, at least not to the way it is today. But today, obviously, everything starts and ends with the network. For that reason, the network is always the problem. It was actually always the problem before. They would always say, it's always the network. The network is slow. The network is down. The network is not working. Well, did you optimize your database? What? Did you create an index for the database so that it doesn't have to go through every single record to search for something? What? Now there's a delay of 10 seconds. That must be the network. No, there's nothing on the network delaying 10 seconds. At least not in this case. Almost always, that's the thing. I think as a network professional, you tend to get in this mode of proving what it is not often more than proving what it is. Because once you figure out what it is, this problem's over and everybody goes back to what they were doing. But when you're in the middle of a problem and people are pointing to the network, well, we can't see it. So therefore, that's where the problem must be. That's what we run into. But I think if you are ever in a case where you're troubleshooting, doing protocol analysis, you're looking at the packets on the network, the packets tell you everything. They tell you everything. And if you want to become proficient in solving problems, knowing how to look at a packet capture is so important. It's a little bit out of scope for the Network Plus. We talk about protocol analyzers and we talk about things that can capture packets, but we don't talk about how you capture it. Once you capture it, how do you read it? And I can easily pull up a YouTube video of people speaking a different language, but I can't understand what they're saying. Similar scenario. So that's why I often say this is your lead in. This gives you direction on maybe what you want to do in the future. And we sort of go there. 5 minutes before we get started. 5 minutes already. I've just been chatting for 5 minutes. How's everybody doing in the chat room? Thank you for being here. Thanks for hanging out. We've got all new questions today, as we always do. I wrote these questions up. When did I write them? Last week, because I was out of the studio for 2 days this week, yesterday and the day before. So I had to do everything over the weekend and get everything ready to go, and now I've forgotten completely about it. Now I don't know. I'm sure I wrote some questions. It'll be new for all of us. It'll be one of those where I bring up the question, go, now I remember writing that. A number of the questions we do at the beginning are questions from 2 weeks ago, which makes it even more challenging because I tend to write more questions for a live stream than we have time for. So there's always some left over, and those get pushed off to the next month. And then I add more at the end, and then we just keep doing that. So I never know exactly where things are going to go. You'd love to get your A+. Has the exam changed? Well, there's 2 exams right now, 2 series, the 1100 series and the 1200 series. If you're just starting your studies, you probably should look at the 1200 series because the 1100 series retires on September 25th. We're in the middle of May. You don't have a lot of time, unless you're very, very familiar with the topics already. Just go get the 1100 series exams out of the way. There's the most number of training materials available for the I don't want to call it the older version. It's the previous exam version, except it's still current. It's difficult to talk about this transition period, isn't it? It's that overlap period. But if you're just starting your studies, study for the 220-1201 and the 220-1202. You want the 12 series. That's what you want. Oh, if you took the exam several years ago and only missed it by 3 questions, well, then you might want to look at the 1100 series. There's a lot more materials out for that one. But it's up to you. If you don't think you're going to make it by September, then it's the 1201 and the 1202. So that's what I would recommend. 3 minutes to go, less than. We're counting down to what we get. Are the exams still worth it with a computer science degree? Comp science, it tends to be more of a application development degree. There's really not much IT in a computer science degree. So generally, employers who are hiring computer science majors are hiring for development of software and development of hardware. They're not really looking at IT. IT generally is not something done. Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't get a computer science degree and transition into IT, but then you're sort of throwing away, I wouldn't say throwing away your degree. It'll catch up to you eventually. I don't have a technical degree. My degree's in business management. And so I wouldn't say I threw away that degree because now finally I'm able to use some of that. So you never know. You never know how these things are going to work out. It's a little bit crazy sometimes, the way the world works. You just never know one day to the next how things are going to work. You just kind of have to roll with it. It's a bit of a roller coaster, isn't it? Hope everybody's doing well. I see Malk out there in the middle of the ocean, of the Atlantic Ocean. Malk, hope you're doing well. That's where you are. You often forget that there's all these little leeward islands out there that are all just scattered around down there. It's way out there. I used to cover parts of South Florida, and then they gave me Puerto Rico as part of my territory, which was great. Hey, Malk, greetings to you as well, which was fantastic because I would occasionally get to go to Puerto Rico every month or so and meet with customers and I was doing work, but it was kind of nice to go there, and the people are amazing and the food is great, and it was just a fantastic place to work. But it's a flight. It's longer to fly from Florida to Puerto Rico than it is to fly to New York. And I'd say, well, why don't I just cover New York? And they'd say, well, why? I'm like, because it's quicker to get to New York for me than it is to get to Puerto Rico. Like, what? No, it's South Florida and Puerto Rico. They're right next to each other. You can walk there. You could see it from no, you can't. It's a 3-hour flight. It's a long way away. Oh, it's top of the hour already. That's me talking. So there's contact. We kind of forget it's a big world out there, and there's distance, and yet there's not because of the internet, which is just phenomenal. And case in point, here we are. Let's now go to my keynote. Sorry, I'm off mic a little bit. Let's click a green light. We got it. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, I think we're ready for a live stream, everybody. What about you? Are you ready? Because I am. Let's do this right now. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May 2025 Professor Messer N10-009 Network Plus Study Group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and hopefully you're able to follow along with me and we can answer these questions together online and just have a good time and while we're sitting here going through all of those. We have a lot to go through today, and of course, as with all of our study groups, all of our questions and topics come directly from the official exam objectives. We also have quite a bit that we can talk about with the new questions that I've written, so you'll get a whole bunch of new questions coming in, working through that for you. So we got plenty to do, and we would love for you to join us and participate online. If you are here live, you can do that by open a new browser window and heading over to professormesser.com/QA, which is a great place to go because that will get you questions and answers. Well, at least the question part on your screen. So I want you to go over and get your question answered by going to professormesser.com/QA. In fact, I put a question up there right now so that you will be able to answer this one. I will tell you, of course, and many of you are probably already aware of this, is on our study groups, we have a standing rule, which is please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to answer by visiting the URL that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. So the question I have for you to see if you can answer this one is, this may look familiar, by the way, because it's a question from last month. It's the only question that we have that is a repeat. We call this our rewind question. The question asks, a laptop connecting to the Ethernet network negotiates to 100 megabits per second instead of 1 gigabit per second. Which OSI layer is associated with this issue? Is it layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, layer 7? Again, if you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to be able to answer this question. We will come back to this question in just a moment. I want to first thank you so much for joining us. This is a good chance we have every month to sit down and go over Network Plus topics. We always have such a good time going through Q&A. Not only do we give you these questions in the first hour, I also would like your questions for the second hour. In the second hour of our study group, it's more of an after show, we call it, where you can submit questions to me, and it's the same URL. You go to professormesser.com/QA to be able to submit that question. So feel free to have a look at that. We've got a lot to go through, but as we're sitting here live, keep in mind that we're not always doing a live stream, but you can catch us all the time online on social media. You'll find us on our YouTube channel. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, I would highly recommend you do so. It not only helps us, but you'll know immediately when we release our new videos. You can find that at professormesser.com/YouTube. We also have a weekly Network Plus pop quiz. You can find that on our Twitter account, which is available at professormesser.com/Twitter or professormesser.com/X, since that's actually the name of it now. And of course, we put those same questions on Instagram. You can also find them on LinkedIn. You can also find them on there's a lot of different places. In your email inbox, if you subscribe to them, a lot of places to get these questions from, and lots of things to do with Network Plus. So keep in mind, and don't forget about our Discord. We'll talk more about the Discord in just a bit. Today, we're going to do questions. We're going to talk about questions and discuss topics that come directly from the CompTIA N10-009 Network Plus exam objectives. These are a set of objectives that were released just last year, not even a year. June 20th of 2024 is when those were released. So we're very early on in the life cycle of these 3.5-year exams, which means this exam is due to retire on the 4th calendar quarter of 2027. So if you are studying for your N10-009 as we sit here in May of 2025, you have plenty of time. You don't have to worry about the exam changing or the questions changing or the topics changing. You're good. No problems there. It's a single exam you need to pass. It's 90 minutes in length. You can get a maximum of 90 questions. You probably will get fewer than 90 questions, but they could ask you up to 90. And on a scale from 100 to 900, you need to score 720. That's quite a bit. That is a challenging score with an unusual scale. It's hard to reverse engineer that. Just do the best you can and hope that it's a 720, and then you've earned your Network Plus certification from that single exam. The exam itself consists of multiple choice-based questions, which is what we just saw. There will also be performance-based questions. We'll talk more about performance-based questions in just a bit. Don't forget that we have our entire Network Plus course available for you to watch for free on YouTube. You can find it at professormesser.com/YouTube. But of course, we have offline versions of these videos. We have the audio-only version of these videos. We have our course notes, our exam hacks ebook. You have priority access, Q&A access to these live streams, and more if you purchase a Success Bundle. You can find that on our website at professormesser.com/netsuccess. We also have this live stream available for replay immediately afterwards on YouTube. We also create an audio-only version of this that we distribute in a podcast format, so you can easily subscribe with your favorite podcast listening program, and it will automatically download and have those available wherever you happen to be. So if you like to listen in the car, you like to listen when you're working out, you can do that by downloading these podcasts and listening in. We will also have, if you're on something like Spotify, they're already there. You simply search for Professor Messer on your favorite streaming service. You'll probably find our podcast distribution there as well. We also, if you notice on YouTube, there is a YouTube video description, and that YouTube video description, after about a day, will suddenly fill up with all of these timestamps of what is happening during this live stream and when. And you can simply click on the timestamp to go to that section of the video. These are not created by themselves. As many of you have seen, it's difficult to manage that process through any type of automation. It simply does not work. You have to have someone dedicated who will watch the video and put those timestamps in. And all of you are lucky enough to have someone like that. Lori, my marketing manager, is watching this replay. She's putting those timestamps in for you so that you can find exactly what you're looking for. Give her a wave in the chat room. Give her a hello. Let her know that you appreciate that. She's probably watching the chat go by as well. Probably at 2x speed, I would imagine. That'll show up about a day after we have this live stream completed. So that's something that works quite nicely. When we are not doing a live stream, you can almost always find us over on Discord. That is our chat server. It's also a server where we've set up the ability for you to create an ad hoc study room that you can manage completely and then exit and tear down when you're done all yourself. You don't need me to do it. You can find that on our Discord at professormesser.com/Discord. Will be very good. So have a look at your options there. Maybe you're already on Discord. Very easy to find. Simply go to professormesser.com/Discord or use the Discord icon on the upper right side of our website. And if you're not on Discord, this may be your opportunity. This might be the reason that you actually load up that Discord front end or go to their web-based front end. You don't even have to install anything. Have a look at that at professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you will need to take your Network Plus exam, and I'll remind you that you can go to the CompTIA website to get your voucher, and you'll pay full price. Or you can come to our website and get a discount that's already built in to the same voucher. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. You do have to be in the U.S., Canada, or a U.S. territory to take advantage of these particular vouchers, however. So if you're somewhere else in the world, I apologize. We have been looking at ways to make that available to other parts of the world, but right now it's U.S., Canada, and a U.S. territory. When you purchase from our site, not only are you paying less, I'm giving you more. You get a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook I created with a bunch of tips and tricks for studying for your exam and things you can do during your exam to help you get the best possible score. Tips, tricks, strategies, and more are in this. It's available at professormesser.com/vouchers. And not only you're saving money, maybe this is a good way to help you get a few extra points on your exam. professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's now go back to that question I asked earlier. A laptop connecting to the Ethernet network negotiates to 100 megabits per second instead of 1 gigabit per second. Which OSI layer is associated with this issue? Is it layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, or layer 7? I'm going to stop our poll and see what we did on this one. 44% of you say layer 1, 27% say layer 2, 19% say layer 3, drops down to 9% for layer 4, and 1% for layer 7. Our curve source started at the top and it just dropped down as we went from 1 to 7. Layer 1 was not a majority, but certainly the plurality of you, 44% of you say, yep, that's what I would choose is layer 1 as the physical layer of the OSI model. That's probably exactly what's going on. This question requires you to have knowledge not only of OSI, but also a knowledge of Ethernet auto negotiation. And that's an important thing to kind of put together to be able to answer this question. Obviously, layer 1 of the OSI model is the physical layer. It is the layer that that involves the signal getting across the network. It's really about the signal. We often describe this layer as the cabling layer. Technically, not exactly on point for what it is, but I think that's a pretty good way to remember it anyway. If you're having problems with a physical layer, then you're having problems getting that signal across the network. And if there is a problem with your fiber, if there's a problem with your copper, or a problem with the frequencies in the air, you will certainly have a problem getting that signal from one part of the network to the other. So this is why, as you are going through the process of understanding OSI and where you would fit different problems, anything dealing with signal is going to happen at layer 1. Well, why is OSI layer 1 in that physical layer have anything to do with Ethernet? You said it's Ethernet, 100 megabit, 1 gigabit. We're now into the Ethernet part of things, where there might be something like a layer 2, for example, which is the data link layer. Well, the problem is that we're talking about an auto negotiation problem. If you plug in your gigabit connection, and almost all of the gigabit links that you will run into will be set to auto negotiate, which means when you plug in a device, the switch will figure out, it will talk back and forth to that device and figure out what its maximum speed or its maximum capabilities are, and it will set the speed to those capabilities. The problem with Ethernet, especially when trying to go from 100 megabit to 1 gigabit, is 100 megabit Ethernet uses 2 pairs, 4 wires in that cable. A gigabit Ethernet requires you to have eight wires in the cable. You have to use the entire set of wires that are inside that cable. If any of those extra 4 wires that you are using for gigabit are not punched down properly, they're not crimped properly, something is wrong with even one of those wires, but you still have the original 4 that are there that are working okay, it will auto negotiate down to 100 megabit per second. So anytime you're plugging in, you're expecting gig and you get 100 megabits, it's almost always a cable problem, a wiring issue, a punch down problem, a crimping problem, a physical layer issue, because now that signal can't get through that particular wire. And that's why we are associating this problem with a layer 1 issue. So the 44% of you that said layer 1, that is the right answer for that one. If you were here last month, you probably remembered it pretty well. That's the answer that we were looking for. Well done with that one. Let's now shift gears a little bit, because I mentioned earlier that when you take your exam, you will get a combination of question types. You will get a set of multiple choice questions. In fact, the bulk of your exam will be multiple choice. This is a multiple choice question where you have a question and then multiple answers to choose from. Even if you didn't know the answer to this question, you would be able to at least guess. And if you guessed properly, you had a 20% chance of guessing it right. That's a pretty good guess. On the exam, you usually get 4 answers, which means that number increases to 25% chance of getting it right. So one of the things CompTIA wants to determine is if you really know your stuff. Have you really done your studying? So some of the questions they give you will not be multiple choice questions. CompTIA calls these performance-based questions, but it really is anything but multiple choice. That's what they should have called it. This is the anything but multiple choice question, because they can ask these performance-based questions in any way. It's hard to study for performance-based because these are completely open-ended types of questions, or at least they are in any type of format that CompTIA would like to create. They could be matching, fill in the blank. They could put you to a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. They might have this as a drag and drop question. It might be something on the screen where you have to maybe use pull-down menus to select different aspects of what you're looking at. The important thing to remember is that performance-based questions are pulling the information directly from the exam objectives. And as I like to say, if you know everything in the exam objectives, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. You will be able to answer it without any type of problem because you already know the content. So I have for you, as I do every month, a brand new performance-based question. Here we go. The performance-based question of the month. This one is a matching question. And one of the things that you will notice about this matching question is it is an asymmetric match. And this is one where I have more on one side than the other. It's not quite what you might expect. We have 4 different scenarios, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different tools that I could use for these scenarios. It's a 1-to-1 match. So make sure you only match one of the tools to one of the scenarios. So here are the 4 for you, those of you listening in on the podcast side. Here are the 4 scenarios. They are: server auditors need to find all open ports. The second thing that we want to do, or the second scenario, is a network administrator needs to find CA:62:59:D3:DB:A5. I don't know why I wrote this question. Third on the list is a fiber link between buildings is experiencing CRC errors. And the last one is application response time has increased by 10x. Application response time increased by 10 times. That's probably bad. Now, what tool would we use to best address these problems? And I have for you 7 different tools. They are Protocol Analyzer, Traceroute, Dig, Nmap, Show MAC Address Table, UTP Cable Tester, and Visual Fault Locator. So those are 7 different tools and 4 different scenarios. That means we're going to have 3 tools left over. See, I did the math. I was able to discern how many would be finished and left over when we are done with this question. If you think you know the answer, use the link that's on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your question and see what answers you can get for this one. This is one. So obviously, if you think they're already in order, you could say 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D. Done. Submit that. Obviously, they are not in that order. If I did that, I made a really bad problem for myself. I didn't do it right. I always worry that I'm just going to have everything sort of sync together like that in the live stream. That's the nightmares I have, that I wake up in a sweat. Oh, did I put 1 with A and 2 with B and 3? No, I did not. It is not that way. So you'll be able to figure this out. For those of you listening in again, the 4 scenarios are: server auditors need to find all open ports. A network administrator needs to find CA:62:59:D3:DB:A5. The third one is a fiber link between buildings is experiencing CRC errors. And lastly, application response time has increased 10x, which probably is not what we are hoping for. Not hoping for 10x on our application response time. But how could we resolve these problems? We even might want to talk about scenarios where you might want to use one tool over another, or maybe in some cases, multiple tools might apply. So we're going to go through each one of these with, I guess, a fine-tooth comb and figure out the details with this. See what we think the answer might be as we go through all of these. And let's do that. Let's now shift gears over to the answer page, and we're going to start with the one on the very top. We're going to match these tools. So let's start with the very first problem that we're trying to solve. Server auditors need to find all open ports. Now, with all of these scenarios, there are multiple ways to find this. There are multiple things we can do, but I only have a certain group of tools that you can choose from. So of all of the tools on this list, which one would we choose to find all open ports, I guess, on a server or device of some kind across the network? And if you chose D, Nmap, then you chose that one absolutely right. That's what Nmap does. It's a network mapper. Nmap obviously does a lot of things. Nmap is a ridiculously amazing tool. And the more you learn about Nmap, the more useful that will be for you in your day-to-day work. But one of the things we often associate with Nmap, the thing that is really best known for, is finding open ports. Finding open ports on a device that's on your local network, finding open ports on a device that's on a remote network, finding open ports behind a device that's behind a proxy, that's behind a firewall. It's really good at finding open ports. And it has a number of different techniques it can use depending on the scenario you happen to be in. Obviously, Nmap does more than that. It can identify the operating system running on a device. It can find the version number, first find the open port, determine what service is running on that open port, and tell you what version of that service is running on that open port, even if that service is not directly talking to you. It is amazing in technology that's in Nmap, and that is exactly what you would use as the primary option there. And if I look at the answers that most people submitted, I think a lot of people, the majority of you did choose Nmap for that one. So well done. Some of you chose Protocol Analyzer, and certainly you could see what people are accessing on a device using a Protocol Analyzer, but a Protocol Analyzer is going to look at the packets going over the network. What if somebody is not currently communicating to one of those open ports? Then you won't see it on your Protocol Analyzer. And the Protocol Analyzer itself is not actively putting traffic on the network. It's not running a scan. You have to use something that's really built for this, and that would be Nmap. Next on our list is this one that I was thinking about this when I was writing it. At the end of this line is a MAC address, and I spell out the MAC address. It is a server administrator needs to find CA:62:59:D3:DB:A5. So you should have already known in your head, oh, that's a MAC address. How would I find that MAC address? This is something we're often faced with. There might be an error message we see that pops up that says this MAC address has a problem, or it's creating an issue, or we've been able to perform a reverse lookup. Perhaps we found this in a log somewhere. Maybe we looked at an ARP table and there's an odd MAC address we don't recognize. How can we find that MAC address? Well, we could trace it back through our switches. Our switches are putting together these big tables that have a MAC address and the IP address associated with that MAC address. So if you know the IP or you know the MAC, you're able to kind of trace this down to a specific interface on a switch that may be located somewhere else. You have to go from switch to switch to switch. And the way that you would look at this table that allows you to associate a MAC address with an IP address is by using the answer E, which is a command line on the switch that says show MAC address table. That's one of the best ways you could do. So that may have been a gimme if you remembered that that is a MAC address, not an IP address. And what would I use to do that? Well, MAC address is in the name of that one. So that's a pretty strong option. Option E, that's the one you want to use, which is the show MAC address table. You can look through that table, search through that table for the MAC address, and it will tell you, well, it's going out that way to another switch, or it's local on the switch. If it's local on the switch, you can look at the interface and trace that cable back to the actual workstation, or you can go to the next switch it's pointing to and run the same command and do the whole thing all over again. You may often have to go to multiple switches to finally narrow down where that MAC address may live, but that's an easy way to do it. That is not an IPv6 address. We know that because there are only 6 bytes in this address. It is in hex, which gives you that view, but obviously we have a lot more bytes, a lot more bits in a IPv6 address. So this one would not be IPv6. If there was a double colon here, you could argue that, because double colons are not found in MAC addresses, and that would expand out the address with a bunch of zeros in it. So it's just not big enough. It's just not long enough to be an IPv6 address, but the format is the same. You're absolutely right that looks close. Like it could be. You have to kind of look at it. Wait, let me count these. Nope, it's a MAC address. We got 6 bytes here instead of the mini that we need, the 128 bits that we have in an IPv6 address. A little bit different in that scenario. So that's what we would choose here, is show MAC address table, a great tool and useful to know these command lines that work not only on switches, but a lot of different devices. Third on our list is a fiber link between buildings is experiencing CRC errors. So we already know there are errors. We already know it's a fiber link. It's going between buildings. Of all of these tools, which one would we use first to help understand the problem that we are having. We already know that it's a CRC error, so it must be something perhaps even physical with an interface or the fiber itself. So we could check the fiber. We could check the fiber with a visual fault locator. That is effectively kind of a fancy flashlight that's got a fiber connection on the end. You put it on the end of a fiber and it shines a light, something you can actually look at with your human eyes, because you don't want to look into a fiber that's connected up. You don't want to ever point that into your eyes, because the light that's in there can absolutely damage your eyeballs. Do not do that. Never, never, never do that. Some people will put it, if it's a dark enough room, you can kind of put it on your hand to see if light's coming through, but never look directly into the end of a fiber. It's sort of it's kind of like a weapon. You want to have good fiber rules, so that you always point the fiber away from your eyes. That's the important part of that. A visual fault locator puts light down the fiber, and it helps you physically look at the fiber. And if you see light coming out of the fiber, that must be where a break happens to be. We know in this case it's a CRC error, so there's something physical there. There's an issue with a transceiver, with an interface, with a connector. There's something going on. So one of the ways of all of these different tools, that's the only one that can really help us on a fiber link. So visual fault locator is the one we go with, at least to start with in this particular case. There are many other tools you could use for this as well. So this is one where we might want to look at statistics on a switch. We might want to look at statistics on a router. We might want to see what type of transceiver we are using. Do we have the right transceivers? Let's pull it out and look at the model number. We don't want to mix up a multi-mode transceiver with a single mode transceiver. That would certainly give you CRC errors. But in this case, the only option on our list that makes any sense is answer G, visual fault locator. And that will indicate where a break might be in the fiber. And lastly, application response time has increased by 10x. I kind of gave this one away already, didn't I? It's one of those things. I think it was probably in the back of my brain and I knew that it was coming. So I gave you a preview. So if you answered A, protocol analyzer, it's exactly the answer that you would use. Protocol analyzers allow you to see all the packets going across the network, see everything that's going on. It is the ultimate arbiter over what's really happening on this network. If you want to be able to understand how these networks operate and how they are talking inside of that fiber, inside of that cable, or over the air itself, the frequencies that we use on wireless networks, protocol analyzers are incredible tools. And having spent so much time at Network General and used so many different kinds of protocol analyzers for fiber, for copper, for different topologies, for different connections, they are valuable, valuable tools. And they will tell you why that application response time is increased by 10x. They will absolutely give you that story. Sometimes it may take multiple analyzers running simultaneously on different parts of the network to really give you the broader picture. But this is one of the reasons, by the way, that if you call into tech support and you're saying, we're seeing a weird problem with our router, that the routing tables are not what we expected, and we think it could be a bug with the software, or maybe it's something with our config, the first thing they will ask you is, do you have a packet capture? If you call in for a firewall problem, we're having a problem where data is coming into the firewall, we've set a rule, but it's not coming out of the firewall, it's not in the logs, the first thing they will ask you, do you have a packet capture? The reason they ask that is that it tells the entire story. You're not getting guesses. There's no mystery. You're getting every packet going across the network, and you can watch the conversation occur. It's just a beautiful audit log of everything that's going across the network at the bit level. That is the really important part of this. So in this case, a protocol analyzer is what you would use. So those are our answers. Server auditors would use Nmap to find the open ports. If you're looking for a MAC address, you could do a show MAC address table on your switch, router, or firewall. You have a fiber link between buildings having a problem. Well, maybe we can use a visual fault locator to find any problems with the fiber. And lastly, an application response time. That's a perfect use for a protocol analyzer. Now, there were a number of options on this list we did not use. So let's talk about when we would use those. One that we did not use is a trace route. If you want to be able to see every router between your device and a device that's across the network or even across the internet, you can run a trace route and see every single hop along the way. When I say hop, I am referring, of course, to an IP router. So every time we go through a router, that's a hop. So we often interchange these terms. When we say it's 12 hops away, it's 12 routers away. There are 12 routing devices somewhere in the world between us and that location. That's an interesting statistic, and it's actually a useful tool when you have a problem, especially if you've run the trace route earlier, then you have a problem. Now you can run the trace route again, and it may tell you, well, you're able to get this far to the 4th router, the 5th router is not responding. So another one of those situations. Let's see if, one moment, please. Okay, let's see if we can get the next thing that we have on the list. The other one we didn't do, dig. We did not do dig. Dig is another great command line utility that allows you to query a domain name server to be able to get a response. So if you're trying to look up a fully qualified domain name to get an IP address, you can use dig. If you want to do the reverse, if you want to do send it an IP address and have it give you a fully qualified domain name, we refer to that as a reverse lookup. That's also something you can do with dig. So anytime you see dig and you see NS lookup, those are two utilities that are very similar to each other in functionality. So you may, depending on the platform you're on, you may be able to use one or the other, sometimes both. Most of the time we tend to use dig. It's a little more informational. The format of the output is a little bit easier to understand. And it's one that is, I think, better supported on the Linux side than it is the Windows side. So often we have this divide. If you're on the Linux, POSIX, Mac OS side, you tend to use dig. If you're over on the Windows side, you tend to use NSLOOKUP. The resulting information will be identical. It's just different utility that you're using. And the next one on our list that we did not use, the last one on our list we did not use, is a UTP cable tester. So if you have untwisted pair copper cabling, which is really what I was saying with that. We have copper cabling, we would use a cable tester. Cable testers tend to be very basic continuity type testers to be able to tell you pin 1 on this side is connecting to pin 1 on another side. So you've got at least places to go with those types of testers, but it's really only telling you if they're connected at the wire level. In fact, if you go back to our rewind question where I talked about what OSI layer is responsible between you're plugging in gigabit and it's giving you 100 megabit. First thing you can connect is a UTP cable tester, and it will tell you if all of those pins are connected from one end of the cable to the other. And I'll bet if you did that, you would see that one of those wires is not connected. So just to give you an idea of what you would do. Now, there's also shielded twisted pair along with the unshielded twisted pair. So you've got really cable testers work in either of those scenarios. You don't have to have a separate copper cable tester. If you have unshielded or shielded, it works the same regardless. So you're fine there. Hopefully you were able to get those answers. Thank you for spending some time and going through that with us. You may get different kinds of performance-based questions on your exam. You should be prepared for anything. And the best way to prepare for a performance-based question is to know all of the questions, all of the things that are inside of your exam objectives. Go through those exam objectives, and your not only will your multiple choice questions go easily, your performance-based questions will be very easy for you as well. Let's now shift gears back to our multiple choice questions. The next multiple choice question on our list is this one that asks, a technician is configuring a VIP on a router. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this config? Would it be an increased throughput between devices, connect multiple VLANs between switches, default gateway redundancy, encryption for VPN connections, or prevention of routing loops? All of these are things we can hopefully have on our network. These are all good things to have, but which one applies here? The question again asks, a technician is configuring a VIP on a router. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this config? Is it increased throughput between devices, connect multiple VLANs between switches, default gateway redundancy, encryption for VPN connections, or prevention of routing loops? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what this one is. It's whenever you get into these questions on an exam, they very often use acronyms in the question, but they don't tell you what the acronym means. And the question isn't asking you what the acronym means. The question is using the acronym just as a normal part of a communication, a normal part of language, which is how we use them out in the real world. I hate that term real world. This is all the real world. But when you are on somewhere, especially working on a network somewhere, we use these abbreviations, acronyms all the time. It's an important way to communicate. It's a quick way to communicate. So make sure you're familiar with that. Configuring a VIP on a router. Now, a number of you have submitted your answers. Let's see how you did. The question again asks, a technician is configuring a VIP on a router. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this config? Is it increased throughput between devices, connect multiple VLANs between switches, default gateway redundancy, encryption for VPN connections, or prevention of routing loops? Which one would it be? Well, let's stop our poll and see what you think the answer is. And we can see that we have a bit of a tie. We have 41% of you that said it's a default gateway redundancy. 38% say connect multiple VLANs between switches. 13% of you say the answer is encryption for VPN connections. And then it goes down to single digits. 6% say increased throughput between devices. And 2% said prevention of routing loops. A VIP is a virtual IP. Now, why would you want to configure a virtual IP on a router? Routers have physical interfaces and they have logical interfaces. But what if you weren't associating an IP address with any of those interfaces, but instead you are focusing on understanding why that or assigning to that router, that routing device, some type of IP address that just lives inside the router? Well, one of the best reasons for doing that is if you are setting up some type of redundancy on your network. One of the things I often tell you is that when you're configuring these networks, you configure an IP address, a subnet mask, and a default gateway. And if you look at the configuration of the IP addresses on your machine, you'll see there's one option there for a default gateway. If you go to another operating system and look at the IP configuration, it's only one default gateway. It's the default. That is the gateway we will be using to communicate off of this local subnet. So the problem with IP, one of our biggest challenges when we started scaling this up into larger and larger networks, is we only have a default IP address, one IP address. What if we lose that default gateway? What if it fails? What if the power supply goes out? What if it gets disconnected? What if we plugged in a cable that I crimped and it no longer is talking properly on the network? These are all concerns. So one of the things we do is we assign a virtual IP address to a router and we associate our default gateway with the virtual address. Well, what good is that? Why would we want to have that? Well, the reason we would have that is because we might have this network where we have configured, here's our default gateway. So we've got our device, we're connected to a switch, that switch is connected to a router. Now, if we lose that router and the IP address associated with that router, we'd be dead. Even though there was a backup router, our configuration on our laptop doesn't change. Imagine if you had an outage of that router and you told everybody, okay, everybody, go into your IP configuration and change the default gateway to this new one. No, you'd never be able to get that done. Users wouldn't know where that was, and you don't want them to worry about something like that. You just want it to move automatically. So what we assign is a virtual IP address. This is different than a logical IP address, by the way. This virtual IP address is one we can put anywhere on the network. So if that particular router has a problem, that router fails, well, we're communicating through the network just fine until it breaks. And if there is a broken router, well, we can't communicate that way anymore. So we have protocols that will move that virtual IP address to a different device so that you can now communicate across a different router. And this all happens behind the scenes very, very quickly. And that means we're now able to communicate through that device because although we changed the physical device, we did not change the virtual IP. So therefore, we don't have to change the configuration on our workstation. Nobody knows anything happened that was bad, and we're all up and running. That's the reason that we would configure, one of the many reasons that we would configure a virtual IP, but the only reason in this list. So put it that way. It's one of the most common reasons for configuring a VIP, a virtual IP on that router. Connecting multiple that would be, by the way, the answer, default gateway redundancy, the 41% of you, that is the right answer. Now, 38% of you, practically a tie for first, say connect multiple VLANs between switches. If you're connecting multiple VLANs between switches, you're probably doing trunking, which means you are using 802.1q, or as we often say as a kind of a quick abbreviation, as we say on the street, .1q. So did you configure that .1q link? That's what we're talking about, is a trunked connection between switches, but that has nothing to do with a VIP. In fact, trunking between switches with VLANs is at layer 2. We aren't even talking about IP addresses at that particular layer, so it couldn't possibly be a virtual IP because we aren't working with IP at that level when we're talking about VLANs. Next on our list is 13% of you, encryption for VPN connections. Although we often can use routers as a VPN concentrator, really would be a high-end router for something like that. Or in the case of routers we use at home, a very low-end router. I have a VPN connection on a home-based wireless router switch thing that is there. And so that's certainly something that can be used, but we don't use VIPs for our VPN connections. Very unusual to set up a VPN connection that way. Usually it is an IP address you would assign. Everybody connects to that IP and you're on your way. Next is 6% of you that said an increased throughput between devices. I guess if you were doing something like jumbo frames, that would certainly be increased throughput between devices. If you were increasing the actual bandwidth of the network, that would certainly provide increased throughput. But a virtual IP address really has no impact on the throughput. The network continues to provide the same throughput that it always has. And lastly, prevention of routing loops. If you're running spanning tree protocol, that is loops on the switch network. If you're talking about routing loops, that's all done with routing tables. So that is not anything to do with a virtual IP. That is all doing with routing tables and being able to work through those. So if you answered default gateway redundancy, the 41% of you got that one absolutely correct. Let's keep going. I have more questions for you. Next question on our list asks this, which of the following would be most commonly associated with SLAAC? SLAAC is the term, is the name, is the word, is the acronym. That's what we want to know. Which of the following would be most commonly associated with SLAAC? Is it automatic addressing without a DHCP server? Is it a centralized authentication database? Is it redundant devices running active-active? Is it phase 2 of the IPsec process? Or is it SD-WAN zero-touch provisioning? If you think you know the answer, please use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to follow the link on your screen and answer that one. Which of the following would be most commonly associated with SLAAC, with the SLAAC part of it? Is it automatic addressing without a DHCP server, centralized authentication database, redundant devices running active-active, phase 2 of the IPsec process, or SD-WAN zero-touch provisioning? Went through that a little bit too fast. For those of you listening on the podcast side, my apologies. We'll go a little bit slower on the summary of this one. This is another one of those questions, though. I mentioned this earlier. They give you a question with an abbreviation, but they're not really asking you what the abbreviation stands for. They are instead asking you, what does that do? How would you implement it? Where does it fit in this big world of networking? And that's a very common thing to see on the exam. You will never get a question on the exam that asks, what does SLAAC, what do the letters SLAAC stand for? They never ask. You will never get one. So that's why I tell you all the time, make sure you're not only familiar with the acronym, but you're more familiar with what you would do with that acronym. How does it work? What does that technology mean? So that's why in this particular case, I do want you to understand that part of it. Let's see if you do. Let's see how you did with this question. The question asks, which of the following would be most commonly associated with SLAAC? Is it automatic addressing without a DHCP server? Is it a centralized authentication database? Is it redundant devices running active-active? Is it phase 2 of the IPsec process? Or is it SD-WAN zero-touch provisioning? Let's stop our poll and see what we got. Pretty strong. 70% of you say it's automatic addressing without a DHCP server. 19% say it's a centralized authentication database. And then it's single digits from there. 9% say redundant devices running active-active. 4% say SD-WAN zero-touch provisioning. And 2% say phase 2 of the IPsec process. So if you get into the world of IPv6, you can certainly set up DHCP within IPv6. There are DHCP servers that work very similar to what you would find in the IPv4 world. The beauty of IPv6, however, is that a huge part of the protocol itself then can do its own thing without you needing a DHCP server. So one of the things you can use is a stateless addressing of IPv6. The stateless addressing protocol or SLAC means that we can have it create its own IPv6 address and set up a number of different parameters without using DHCP. Now, that only goes so far, of course. There are certain things that you cannot discern automatically on a network. Things like, what DNS server should I use? You know, that's not part of the IP configuration of your device, at least not directly. Another one is, what about other options? How do I configure where my voice over IP server is? There's a great option within DHCP that allows you to set the location of your voice over IP services. Well, can't do that. So there still might be a reason to use DHCP with IPv6, but maybe you're not configuring an IP address with it. Maybe you're simply adding in the additional things that you need to get that system up and running. So it gives you at least an option of what to work on. So that means the 70% of you that said automatic addressing without a DHCP server got it absolutely right. That is what we were looking for. 15% said in centralized authentication database. Well, that might be TACACS, it might be LDAP, it might be Radius, it might be Kerberos, it might be Active Directory. There's a lot of ways to have a centralized authentication database, but it would not be Slack. You've got 9% that said redundant devices running active-active. That's not when we would use Slack. There are certainly protocols that can go between devices, especially when you set things up and sort of work things that way. But I think if you're ever in a case where you are working through an active-active config, active-active, by the way, means you have redundant devices, and those redundant devices are working at the same time, performing the same service. So you're almost balancing the load between two separate devices, although technically it's not load balancing. It may be distributing it in a particular format that seems to be balancing the load in a certain way. There's a lot of, we can go down that rabbit hole if you would like, because I've set up many active-active configurations. And it is not a config that is something you can simply just turn on and it works. If you are setting up most redundant systems, they are active-passive, which means one is working and it does all of the work. But if it ever has a problem, everything moves over and this machine suddenly becomes the active one and it suddenly starts working. But you're really only using one at a time. That's a relatively simple thing to engineer. When you start setting up multiple devices that are working simultaneously on a network, there's a lot of things you have to worry about engineering. If it's a firewall, for example, you could have traffic coming in one firewall, but going out a different firewall. Well, that's not something that commonly works. Commonly, firewall, you need to go in and out the same firewall. So if you have two of them, you have to set up a link in the middle where they can share their tables. It just becomes a much larger engineering task. That's just one of the things you have to worry about, just to give you a feel of what that would be. But that's not what Slack would be used for. 4% of you said SD-WAN, zero-touch provisioning. Whenever you're setting up SD-WAN connectivity and being able to send all of these cloud-based applications to the appropriate part of the cloud, it is a useful tool to be able to have zero-touch provisioning. You push a button, everything automatically gets provisioned. That's one of the beauties of the cloud, of course, but that's not where we would use Slack. And then lastly, phase 2 of the IPsec process. There's obviously 2 phases when you're setting up an IPsec tunnel. Got phase 1, phase 2, and then hopefully your tunnel is up. If it isn't, you go back to the logs. You never know how good of a log reader you are until you have to set up an IPsec tunnel. And then suddenly you are the best log reader in the world, because if you have a problem with IPsec, it tells you in the log where it ran into a problem. But now you have to decipher the log. And IPsec is its own little language, its own little science. And if you don't know what happens in phase 1, the log is not going to help you very much. If you don't know what happens in phase 2, the log is not going to help you very much. So you need to understand how IPsec works, what you would expect to see at phase 1, what you would expect to see at phase 2, and then you can go that direction. One of the things you will find out, of course, is that Slack is not part of the IPsec process. So your answer here indeed was the 70% of you, as if there was any question at all, that say that this was automatic addressing without a DHCP server. And if you answered that one, got it absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another one. Now, we were just talking about firewalls, so let's do a firewall question. Here's one that we have on our list. This looks like a fun one. I really haven't done this one before. Let me get my big head out of the way. We're going to do this one without, maybe I'll put myself down here. Here we go. Refer to the following firewall rule. So I have a firewall rule that is right here on the screen. And the rule says the source address is any, the source port is any, the destination address is 10.10.22.7, the destination port is 514, and the action is block. So my question is, which of the following would describe the results of this rule? Would it be, can't even put that on the screen, users cannot log in using their network credentials? Is it that administrators now cannot remotely access a router console? Is it traffic with known vulnerabilities are blocked at the firewall? Is it that network traffic reports are unavailable? Or is it that all incoming email transfers are blocked? Which would it be? Now's the time to look it up to see what the answers might be. And I might want to look at, this is where we have to really start thinking about what we would do, what we would use for these different tools that we have here. And we have to know a little bit about everything on networking. We have to understand switching and routing and security and Windows connectivity and working at the command line. There's so many different aspects. So a firewall rule is a really good test to see, do we really understand how all of these things fit together? Because we are using many of them in one place. I don't want to give too much away. If you think you know the answer, you go to this link, which I will put up and bring right down again, professormesser.com/QA to answer this question. Submit your answer by going to that link and see how you would describe the results of this rule. If you get into firewall administration, and I did this for a number of years as well, working as a systems engineer for Palo Alto Networks, we did a lot of firewall rules. I did hundreds and hundreds of thousands of firewall rules in my career there. So you do have to become very familiar with what you would expect to happen when you are working with those types of firewall rules. With the, as we say in the world of Palo Alto Networks, the security policy is where that is, which is your rule base for your firewall. There are many policy lists in a Palo Alto Networks firewall. That's the one that deals with traffic on the network to be able to work through it. See if you know this one. A lot of you got your answers in pretty quick. I have good feelings about this. I've not looked at your answers yet to know what it is. So we're going to hope we know what this one is. Let's see how you did. The question again asks, refer to this firewall rule. Source address is any. Source port is any. The destination address is 10.10.22.7. The destination port is 514, and the action is block. Which of the following would describe the results of this rule? Is it that users cannot log in using their network credentials? Is it that administrators cannot remotely access the router console? Is it that traffic with known vulnerabilities are blocked at the firewall? Is it that network traffic reports are unavailable? Or is it that all incoming email transfers are dropped? Which one would it be? Let's see what you chose. We stop our poll and have a look. We'll scroll down a bit. We can see that 49% of you say that network traffic reports are unavailable. 24% of you, though, say that traffic with known vulnerabilities are blocked at the firewall. 12% of you said administrators cannot remotely access a router console. And then a tie for last place with 7% apiece. Users cannot log in using their network credentials, and all incoming email transfers are blocked. They're dropped right at the firewall. Can't get anything through. So if we go with let's give it an extra point. We'll say it's a majority. We'll say 50% of you or so say that network traffic reports are unavailable. Now, if you've looked through our video on firewall rules, and you're probably familiar with how these are laid out in the firewall itself, the ACLs are right there, access control list. We often call these by many different names. You might call it an access control list. You might call it a security policy list. You might call it a firewall rule base. There's a lot of things happening along those. And they are usually with very specific rules at the top. And then as you go further down into the list, there are more broader rules that block things, but that's not always the case. It just happens to be the way these rules are commonly set up. And most firewalls, if you don't put any rule in this rule base, it will just deny it when it hits the bottom. But that wasn't the scenario we had in this case. The scenario we had in this case was a very specific rule. I did put, this is really a base set of tuples that you would run into. Most firewalls these days have other parameters that you can add to this rule base. For example, here we have a remote IP, remote port, local port, protocol, and a disposition or action. But many firewalls will include application name. They will include other parameters. There may be even an Active Directory group name or a username. You could put those into firewalls these days. So this particular firewall rule that we've created is very basic. We're just saying from any source address across any port, communicating to a specific IP address with a specific port number, we're going to deny that traffic, which means looking at that rule, there's one server out there that has this port running on it. Knowing that port number now becomes really helpful. This is where I mention, if you've looked at these port numbers you have to memorize at the beginning of the exam objectives, many people look at that list and think, when would I ever use this information? Why am I memorizing port numbers? And indeed, rote memorization is never fun. It's not a good thing to do. But when you start applying those port numbers, when you start using those port numbers, suddenly you start realizing, oh, there is value in knowing port numbers. There are things we need to know with port numbers. And if you go to the list that we have, in fact, I'll go back. Here's our firewall rule base, but I want to pull up our exam objectives. This is where everything sort of comes together on our list. If we were going to look at objectives and understand what they are, here is, I'm going to put this up so we can actually roll these open. If you go to your exam objectives into section 1.4, where you need to explain common networking ports, protocol services, and traffic types, these are all the ports you need to know on the Network Plus exam. So this is it. You don't have to go any further than what's in this list. But again, the port number that we used in that question was port 514. There it is. And if we look at 514, it's associated with syslog. Aha! Syslog is port 514. That's the little piece of information you needed to know to be able to answer this question, is that syslog is 514. So if we pop back to where we were, we know syslog is used to be able to transfer log information from a device to a centralized log repository. So which one of these would be affected by this rule? Users cannot log in. Well, that doesn't have anything to do with the logs. Administrators cannot remotely access a router console. That has nothing to do with the log. Traffic with known vulnerabilities are blocked at the firewall. It's more of an IPS function of your firewall and certainly not related to logs. And then all incoming email transfers are dropped, not logs either. So maybe not logging in with network credentials, That could be an LDAP issue. It could be a Kerberos issue. We have to look at those port numbers, not the port number involved here. Can't remotely access a router console. That would be SSH. Maybe Telnet. Probably not. Probably SSH. That wasn't the port number we're working with. Known vulnerabilities at the firewall. That's an IPS. No port numbers there. All incoming email transfers are blocked. That would be SMTP. We aren't talking about the SMTP ports. We are talking about ports dealing with sending log information, which means our network traffic reports would be unavailable. That's the answer we were looking for. So if you're somebody who answered, the 49% of you that answered network traffic reports are unavailable, got that one absolutely right. That's the answer we were looking for. That's the one that gives you the details. Hopefully that's now given you some perspective of things you need to know for this exam. We've got one more. I know we're at the top of the hour, but I have another question for you once we get there. But very quickly, let me remind you that we have tons of Network Plus videos. Our entire Network Plus library is online. Every minute of every video is available on our YouTube channel for you to watch whenever you would like. There's no registration. It's not a part of the video. Nothing is behind a paywall. There's nothing you have to do other than visit YouTube. You can watch the entire course and learn everything you need to know to earn your Network Plus certification. But there may be times after going through these 87 videos, it's over 12 hours of content, there may be some videos you simply don't have time to go through, or maybe they're topics that you're familiar with, but you would like to have a summary of all of the information that was contained within those videos. Well, I got you, because I've created for you a set of course notes that contains all of the information from every video in my course, and they are all listed in the table of contents, and you can go through these notes to see all of the text from every video, all of the charts, all of the important graphics. Everything that you see that's important is in these course notes. They are a very effective summary of everything you need to know for your Network Plus exam. So this is probably one of the best ways to put everything into one single view. It's available in that PDF format you just saw and physical formats. Obviously, the physical book is identical to the digital book. It's just in a physical form. We chop down trees. That's okay. We planted more trees. We're good. We're good with this, but I can send this to you. You can decide when you're checking out whether you would like the digital PDF or if you would like the physical version. If you choose to get the physical version, you still don't have to wait on this to arrive. I also give you the digital version for free, so that you can immediately download and start studying right away. Those are my course notes. You can find out more about those at professormesser.com/NPCN, or simply follow the menu at the top of the Professor Messer website. Let's now, I'm going to look very quickly before we go further into this list. I'm going to pop back to my view here. One moment, please, while I get my life together. So that's a big ask, isn't it? But indeed, this is where it is. I just don't want to give, I have a question in here that sort of copies some of the things we've already talked about today, and I didn't want to do that. So let's give you this question. I have a new one for you on your screen we can go to. Let's go to this next question on this list that asks, a technician is troubleshooting a north-south traffic flow. Which of the following would best describe this connection? And I have a number of options available for you. Would it be, bring up this view, would it be backup process between data center web servers? Would it be certificate retrieval from a local HSM? Would it be authentication to cloud-based directory service? Would it be lag between two core switches? That's not delay lag, that's lag, L-A-G, all capitals. Or would it be transfer of log data between local file servers? So we got a few things to go through there. See what you think the answer is. The question again asks, a technician is troubleshooting a north-south traffic flow. Which of the following would best describe this connection? Is it a backup process between data center web servers, certificate retrieval from a local HSM, authentications to a cloud-based directory service, lag between two core switches, or transfer of log data between local file servers? If you think you know the answer, follow the link, lock it in, go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your question. If you think you know the answer, make sure you go to the link on your screen. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You instead want to go to the link on your screen to lock in what you think the answer might be. This is another example of, here's a topic, but I'm not asking you what the topic is. I'm asking you the results of using that particular technology. And this is a pretty good example of something like that. See if you know what this one is. A lot of people locking in their answer right now. I'm not going to look at the answers. It'll be a surprise for all of us. So maybe you've even been working with some of these. In fact, maybe some of these scenarios that I provided in this question are things you've done before, and maybe you know it applies to the question, or maybe you know it absolutely does not. You might be able to get rid of some of the answers in there if you happen to already be familiar with them. That's what they are. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a technician is troubleshooting a north-south traffic flow. Which of the following would best describe this connection? Is it a backup process between data center web servers, certificate retrieval from a local HSM? Is it authentications to a cloud-based directory service? Is it lag between two core switches? Or is it the transfer of log data between local file servers? Which one is it? Well, let's see what you answered, and we'll see if that applies. We're kind of mixed on this one. 41% say it's authentications to a cloud-based directory service, but 32% say it is a backup process between data center web servers. We also have 12% that transfer log data between local file servers. 12% say lag between two core switches, and then 2% say a certificate retrieval from a local HSM. Well, when we talk about north-south traffic flows, we really need to understand the difference between a north-south traffic flow and an east-west traffic flow. East-west traffic flows is all traffic flows that occur within the same data center. This probably means that you're going to get very good response, very high throughput. You probably have lots of bandwidth between those connections because they're probably sitting right next to each other in the same data center. Maybe one's on one aisle and one's on the other, but you can connect them probably with copper and get 10 gig a second. You could probably connect them with fiber and get even more. So these are very, very local systems. They are right there in those racks. We can look at both of them in the same room effectively. That is what an east-west traffic flow implies. A north-south traffic flow means that we are going outside of our data center to somewhere else. It's going out into the world. It could be just be going to a user somewhere else, or it could be someone that is on another location at another remote site somewhere outside of our data center. So anytime you're going outside the data center, you're leaving the facility, that's north-south traffic. And our question was about north-south traffic. There's our data center. You can see that we have an internet link coming in. We got some core switches / routers here at the top. They're going to distribution switches in the middle. And then at the bottom, we have devices, servers that are connected directly to those distribution switches. And we got lots of redundancy in here. And all the redundant links in here, which is not uncommon on things like a data center. That way, if we lose a connection, somebody trips over this cable, something happens to this cable connection, it's okay. We have another way to get out to the internet and back again using multiple redundant links. If we are going out to the internet, it is a north-south traffic flow. If we're communicating within those devices, it is an east-west traffic flow. So let's go back to the question we were talking about. A technician is troubleshooting a north-south traffic flow, north-south. So everything that we're communicating is going from a local device and is going outside of our facility. It's leaving the place. It's leaving the country. It has left the building on north-south. So which one of these things would be a north-south traffic flow? Well, if we look at 2% of you said certificate retrieval from a local HSM. Local means it's in our data center. That's east-west. It's definitely not that one. 12% of you said a link aggregation lag between two core switches. Those are two core switches. Link aggregations are devices that are connected next to each other. They would not be across an internet connection. So that is an east-west traffic, not north-south. So it's not the answer we were looking for. Transfer of log data between local file servers. local file servers. So east-west, not going to be used there. And then 32% of you said backup processes between data center web servers. These are web servers in the same data center. We're backing them up. We don't have to send that traffic anywhere. It all stays locally. It's east-west, which means there's only one thing left: authentications to a cloud-based directory service. If we're leaving the data center and we are authenticating on a cloud-based system, then that is outside of our network. That is a north-south traffic flow. So the 41% of you that answered authentications to a cloud-based directory service got that one absolutely right. Well done. Well, I know that we're now past the top of the hour. One thing I have not done for you today is to give you information about our continuing education unit credit. And if you are already certified and you are looking to renew your certification using CEUs, I would like to be able to give you a 1-hour webinar category CEU that you can apply towards that effort. The way that you can earn that CEU is you have to follow these instructions. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In the Contact Us link, put your name, put your email address. In the subject line, please put May 2025 Network Plus. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, Cloud-Based Directory Service. Cloud-Based Directory Service is the super secret code words of the month. You can put anything else in that message you would like, because I will be reading every single one of these, and you can send that to me. You don't have to put anything else in there if you don't want to. Just hit send. I'll know what to do with it. And that's all you have to do to earn your CEU. It takes me about a week to turn these around, but I generally get them back in about 7 days or less. Again, the process is you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You click the Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put May 2025 Network Plus. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, Cloud-Based Directory Service. And that is how you can earn 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. It's just that easy to make that happen. So see if that might give you information you need for your studies. Might be pretty good to work with that. Now, if you're somebody who is starting your Network Plus studies or you're finishing up your Network Plus studies, one of the most valuable resources that you have available are the official exam objectives. This is a set of objectives that tells you everything you need to know to pass this exam. Everything you need to know. Really, is it everything you need to know? It is everything you need to know. For example, I have a copy of the Network Plus exam objectives right here. They give you every bullet, every topic, every port number, every abbreviation, everything you need to know. If you know everything that is listed in these comprehensive objectives, you're going to pass your exam because CompTIA sticks to this list. They do not deviate from this list. Other people, I've seen it on the internet, people all the time say, no, they go outside this list. No, they don't. You should look, they stick to this list like it's honey, like it's molasses. They are stuck to it. They are not going anywhere off this list. So this is what you need to know. If you know everything on this list, you are going to pass your exam. That's how close they stay to this list. So that's the important part, is knowing that those objectives are available and they're free. There's no reason you shouldn't get your hands on these. You can find them by going to your favorite search engine and type in CompTIA exam objectives, or follow my link. I'll take you right over there. There's a link at professormesser.com/objectives. Use those. They're extremely valuable. They're a great checklist to use. If you don't know if you're ready to take the exam and you want something to give you that feedback, to tell you, am I really ready? This is the checklist you can use. So if you can explain to yourself or someone else every bullet that's in this list, then you're ready to take your exam. It's a great way to do that. It's a fantastic barometer, and really sets you up for understanding things you might need a little more help with. And of course, knowing the things that you have down cold. It's a great document, professormesser.com/objectives. We do one of these study groups every month. The next month is June. Can you believe it? We're in June already. So as June is coming up, our study groups for June are on the 10th and 12th of June are for A+. Our Network Plus study group is on the 18th of June, and our Security Plus study group is on the 25th of June. We're not done with May, of course. Next week on Wednesday is our Security Plus study group for May. So we've got a lot to go through there. If you start breaking them down, seeing more details, and there's a lot of information that we're going to go through on all of these. And of course, every month is a brand new set of questions. We don't repeat questions on our study group. What good would that be? I want to give you something new every time you show up. Well, we're done with the first hour, but that's okay. We got more to go through. Stick around for our after show. Well, I will answer any question, where I will answer almost any question that you have. Simply go to professormesser.com/QA to submit your question at any time. Of course, we have our Success Bundle for Network Plus. You can find it at professormesser.com/netsuccess. Don't forget our discounted vouchers are available on our website. Why would you pay full price at the CompTIA website when you can go to professormesser.com/vouchers? And of course, if there's social media, then we're probably on there. Go to professormesser.com/discord/youtube/twitter/x/instagram/linkedin/facebook/ all of those things. You can find us there somewhere, and we'll probably you'll probably run into us somewhere wherever you go. And if we're not on your favorite social networking site, you tell me which one you would like me to be on. We'll make a link over there and see how well that goes. We'll see what we do with that. Well, that brings us to the end of our first hour, but stick around for our after show. We have a lot more to go through, but thank you so much for joining us in this first hour. We will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Okay. Let's now move this out of the way. Let's put this over here. Nope, that's the wrong graphic. There we are. Wait, there's two of me. That's one too many. Some people would say two too many, but we're going to go with that. Let's get rid of that. There we go. All gone now. Now we can kind of focus on our after show. We did this first hour of Q&A, which, by the way, you guys did really good with the Q&A today. I was so pleased with the Q&A piece of it. There's plenty that we can go back and think about with some of these topics, and places, I think, where we were able to identify topics, technologies, and things maybe you should study a little bit more on. So anytime you get a question wrong in our study group, that's fantastic. Say it this way. It's really great when we do that, because we are able now to understand where to focus our efforts on all of these questions. So it's a great way to know that we've learned something and we're more prepared for our exam than we were when we started this study group. So let's now talk about the after show. In our after show, you can submit questions at any time using that same URL that we've been using this whole time. If you have a question you would like me to answer, you can submit them at professormesser.com/QA. I'll be glad to sift through those in our after show to see what questions you have. So I'm going to start flipping through the questions that are already here and seeing where you might want to go with some of these. We've got a lot to go through with the differences. So let's start with people that are working on their exam right now. So let's first talk about performance-based questions. I think this might be a good one to talk about. Performance-based questions. This is from Alex, who asks, got an exam tomorrow. Tomorrow is your Network Plus exam for Alex. Everybody think good thoughts for Alex. Send him the good juju. So he's going into this exam ready to go. Alex asks, could you go through some of the simulation exam questions you might find on the exam? We already did one of them today. It's really not a simulation question as much as it is a performance-based question, because the performance-based questions may not be a simulation. It may just be a question that's asking you a matching question or a fill-in-the-blank question. There might be times when they do put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. I guess you could call that a simulation. So a simulation can be a performance-based question, but a performance-based question doesn't necessarily have to be a simulation. Hopefully that made sense. But that's an important consideration. The thing I would recommend is you go back to our other study groups. Last week, for example, I'll just pull it up. I'll give you a, it's not really a preview, it's more of a post view, isn't it? Let me tell you the performance-based question we did last month, and you'll kind of get a feel for it. Let me bring it up. Going off mic. Here we go. Bring it up. Not prepared with last month's presentation. You got to feel the need for this. So last month, for example, last month was this one where I asked different classes for different IP addresses. This could have been a matching question. This could have been a drag and drop question. It could have been a pull down window question where you're pulling down and choosing the right class for each of these. And then in the month prior to that, this is kind of fun. Let's keep going through these. In the month prior to that one, I'm trying to get more done here. So let's go to March. We're going to our March study group. Got lots going on here. In our March study group, scroll. It was kind of a simulation, wasn't it? The March study group was this one that said, from the command line, identify the FQDN of 1.1.1.1. And what would you type at the command line to get there? And bonus points if you could identify the FQDN. So that's a very good example of a simulation, if you want to call it that. So I have a year's worth of these that you could go back and look at in our archives. So you can go back to the Network Plus study group and go through each one of the previous study groups for the last year, and you'll get a different style, a different type of question each month for performance-based questions. That's really one of the best places you can go that I have that can help you understand what you might want to do from a simulation perspective. So hopefully that gives you at least a little something you can work on. I think that's a case where some of them were simulations, some of them were not simulations, and having all of them there. So that might help you a little bit. And I think that gives you at least some feel. But just keep in mind that anything that's a performance-based question are things that you already know. If you know the exam objectives, every question in your exam is going to be based on these exam objectives. And as I mentioned earlier, if you know the objectives, it doesn't matter how they ask the question. We could have made a performance-based question from all of our multiple choice questions today. So just to give you an idea that you shouldn't focus on how the question is asked. You should be focusing on, do I know the answer? Because then you're able to either type it in, choose it from a list, match it to something else, choose it in a pull-down menu. You see where I'm going with this. So that's the important part, is knowing the differences in all of these and where they focus. I think that might be where we should all kind of focus on these. Might be very, very useful to have that there. So let's keep going through our list of questions. Again, if you'd like to submit a question, you can do it at the link you have on your screen at professormesser.com/QA. Be able to do that. Let's keep going through our list. Oh, there was another question up here I thought was really good. It does come up often, but I think it's useful to go through. It's from my super close BFF, Anonymous. Anonymous asks, I plan on taking Net Plus this Monday, and I was wondering if I should take CCNA or Security Plus next. Okay, first, I think we all got to give it to Anonymous a little bit. Anonymous has already passed this exam. Not even taken it yet. Not even stepped in the room. Hasn't even gotten a grade yet. Already looking past it. Like, I'm going to crush this thing. What do I do next? So good on you, Anonymous, for doing that. But let's look at your question, which says, should I take CCNA or Security Plus next? To put things into perspective, I want to start a career in network administration. And I got to tell you, Anonymous, you picked the right one. You did. Because a number of different things. Let's kind of focus on the other side of this question first. And let's talk about security in the workplace. As I mentioned earlier, through my different jobs, through the different places I have worked in my career, I have worked as a desktop administrator, a server administrator. I've worked as a systems engineer for a network management protocol analysis company, Network General, and Network Associates, and then Network General again, all the same company. I never left. The name just kept changing. And then I worked also as a systems engineer for Palo Alto Networks doing firewall engineering, building out firewalls, some of the biggest data centers in the world. It was great fun if you have a chance to do something like that. The challenge, though, and one of the things I think the industry has not done a very good job at or maybe intentionally has done a very bad job at, is telling people, go get training on security, go learn about security. Security is what you should be doing. Security is the way to get into this business. And that is not wrong, but it's not right. So there are jobs out there that are IT security positions, and they are entry-level positions. So if you live in a very large geographical area, big city, there are probably very large companies that have some type of presence in that area. And very often those very large companies will have a security operations center, a SOC. This is either a room or a group of rooms or a group of people that are responsible for maintaining, monitoring, and reacting to security issues for the entire organization. So this would be, it has to be a really big company to have a SOC. If you were a 10-person company, you don't have a SOC. You know, you have an IT person who comes in every once in a while and they're effectively in charge of your security. But for really, really large companies, you need some type of centralized, I don't want to call it a help desk, but it's kind of like a help desk for security. That's what a SOC is. A network operations center, a NOC, is like a help desk, but for networking. So we don't use the term help desk or service desk. We call it a NOC or a SOC. But they have great entry-level positions. If you want to get into networking, a NOC is a great place to try. If you want to get into security, a SOC is a great place. The problem you run into with security is that to get the jobs in an IT security department, you need to have a strong foundation in operating systems and networking, and especially networking. So this is why I tell people all the time, don't work on security without having any type of work already done in the field, because it's hard to jump into an entry-level security position. They have a couple of them out there, for example, the ones at a SOC, but the number of positions available at a SOC is so small compared to the broader set of entry-level positions that might be in a traditional help desk, service desk environment, or even a network operations center. So my recommendation is to build your foundation. Learn everything you can about Windows and its operating system and how it operates in an enterprise with Active Directory and the security associated with that. Learn everything you can about networking, about switching, about routing, and understand how it's implemented in an enterprise environment and how you associate security with all of that. Then once you have operating systems in place, you've learned about Windows, you've learned about Linux, maybe you've learned about a little Mac OS because it's out there. You're going to find it. And it's interesting, a lot of people don't know Mac OS and don't want to know Mac OS. I think there's an opportunity there for a lot of you. So the more you know about Linux and Windows, good. If you know a lot about those other sort of niche areas, that actually helps too. So operating systems is one side. Networking is a big part of it. When you get into the world of IT security, networking is a huge part of IT security because you have IPsec configurations. You're building out a firewall. You're implementing it into a routed or switched network. There's routing protocols and encryption and integration with other services. You also have to set the security policies on that device. There's so much networking, IP and otherwise, associated with that. So I always tell people, if security is your interest, keep your eye on that, but work up to it. Because entry-level security is not the same thing as entry-level into the industry. Entry-level security is where you already know operating systems, you already know network. Now you can entry-level into the security world. So that's something it's an important thing to keep in mind, because I think a lot of the places I see online say, get your security training, get your security diploma, and go out and get that security job. Okay, what security? What are you talking about? What security job am I going to get right out of school? There's not a lot of them out there. That doesn't mean there aren't any. I get angry messages from people sometimes. You're telling people there's not any jobs out there. There's plenty of jobs. There are many jobs out there. I would not say plenty of jobs out there, but get your foundation in place. Because once you have a strong foundation in operating systems, a strong foundation in networking, it's an easy move over into the security side. There's no worries there. You've already set yourself up for success. So back to this question from Anonymous, who said, I want to start a career in network administration. And your choices are the Cisco Certified Network Administrator certification or a Security Plus certification. Well, CCNA is your choice there, isn't it? Anything that's network related at that point is a good place to go. And it might be worthwhile to get some more information, some more knowledge on Windows and Linux at a minimum, because if you're going to go into networking, you have to understand, how do those operating systems network? What do I change in those operating systems to modify the way that they network? How would I set a jumbo frame on a Linux machine? And then how would I set up that Linux machine to operate properly through the switches we are using? Those are the questions you're going to be posed with. You might be able to set up on the switch if you've got your CCNA training. They go, great, we got the switch ready for jumbo frames. What do I do on the Linux box? Oh, I don't know the Linux box with jumbo. Can we Google? Did somebody know that? You don't want to be that position. You need, when Linux, you go to this file, you turn this on, you change this, you modify that depending on the Linux distribution and make that happen. So that's my recommendation. If you are somebody who is going down the path of networking, great path, by the way, get you as much network certifications as you can. Don't worry about the Security Plus. You'll get to that point. There will be plenty of time for the security stuff as you go. And when you hop into the Security Plus at that point, you're going to absolutely understand how the routing of this IPsec works, how the NATing that you're setting up inside the firewall affects everything else, what you need to configure to allow certain protocols to pass through, and what would those protocols look like, and how do they operate. That's the information you need on the network side, and I think CCNA would be a great start to get to that point. Let's now find some more questions that you're submitting. If you'd like to submit a question, again, the link is on your screen. You can go to professormesser.com/QA to submit your question. Sorry, I go off mic just a little bit as I'm punching things here on the screen, and I go off there a little bit. I hear it in the audio replay, and I apologize for you folks. I'm going to drag the mic around as I do that some more if we keep working on that. Let's keep going. Of the other pieces that are here. We've got a lot of great questions that you have submitted. Let's keep going down here. We talked earlier about where we go if we want to get into networking. This is another common question that's sort of in the same vein and working through it. This is also from Anonymous, probably a different Anonymous, who asks, I'm currently a student gaining knowledge and obtaining certifications with no idea yet on career path. Well, you're just like any other student, so you're good. The question asks, what CompTIA certification for general purpose do you suggest after A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus? Well, if you're asking for a CompTIA certification and one for general purpose, you did them already. you got them. There are no other ones that I would recommend for you at this point. Had you not started your studies yet, I guess maybe Tech Plus could be considered, but since A+ is really the more popular starting point, you already got it. Network Plus is certainly a popular starting point on the network side. You already got that one. Security Plus, absolutely a starting place on the security side. You got that one. There are no other CompTIA certifications that would be good general purpose certifications. There are other CompTIA certifications that are more specialized. So things like CISA Plus or CASP over on the security side, for example. But if you're still a student, you're not even sure exactly what your career path is yet, I wouldn't worry about it. I think you've got the 3 CompTIA certs you need as a foundational set of certs. Maybe now we start feeding in some others. I guess if you had to pick a CompTIA cert, if you're really stuck on CompTIA, Cloud Essentials and Cloud Plus are some pretty good cloud certifications. That's a good option. But you might also want to look at AWS or other cloud providers. Obviously, Microsoft and their Azure certifications are certifications that many employers will look for. And this is where I will give you the standard response when somebody asks me, what cert should I do next? I don't know, because I don't know what you want to do. I don't know where you live. I don't know what jobs are in your area. I don't know what employers are asking for. And everywhere you go in the country and around the world, those answers change. So I can't tell you what the best option will be for you because I don't know your specific situation. So I would recommend you go look at the jobs in your area. You know, you're still in school, you're a student, you're getting that degree. While you're there as a student is a perfect time to start creating a big spreadsheet of all of the jobs in your area or the place where you would like to live, and list out what employers are looking for. What better way to answer the question than with some cold, hard facts? And I mentioned this, I have a video, it's in the YouTube video description of this video, how to get a job in IT with no experience. And I talk about the things you really need to best position you for that first job in IT. One of those is this process. You go through the job listings in your area, either go directly to the company websites or go to your favorite job consolidation site, the Indeeds of the world, the Dice.coms, the whatever the latest ones. It seems to change every month, which one's the most popular, LinkedIn jobs, and see what employers are looking for. So obviously you want to find the jobs where you really feel this job applies to you. You don't want to pick a job where you have to have a CCNA and a CCIE and a high-end CISSP no. Find the jobs that match your qualifications. And then for those jobs, what formal education do they want? What IT certifications do they want? What other knowledge are they looking for that may not necessarily even be a cert? You know, knowledge of Windows Server, knowledge of Linux, whatever it happens to be. So you've got a list of those other things as well. And also they're going to want to know they might have other specifics on there that are good to have. So document all of those for that job. Now do that 30 more times or for how many other jobs are in your area. So find out what all of the employers are looking for. And you might start to see some trends. You might start to see that everybody wants an A+. If you live in the DC area, you might find everybody seems to want a Security Plus. These are the things that happen. So I highly recommend you go through the process of really understanding what the different types of jobs are in your area or where you want to live. And then it will start to tell you what direction you should be leaning to have the best possible chance of getting a job with that particular company. Now, is that the be-all, end-all of certifications and knowing what certs are the most important? Of course not. There may be personal reasons why you might want to go get a Security Plus over something else, even though companies in your area are not hiring people that have Security Plus or concerned so much about hiring for a Security Plus position. Maybe there's something you want to do with that certification that's kind of outside the scope of what employers want. But just keep in mind, that's a different thing. You know, your own interests are good, but interests of people that are willing to hire and pay you are different. So make sure you put those with the right priorities, and I think you'll be okay. So that was my option for you. I think that would be good to consider. It's not always the most obvious answer. Sometimes you just go with what the employers want just so you can get your foot in the door. And once you get your foot in the door on that first IT job, then you can start leaning one direction or the other because now you have practical experience behind you. You're standing on the literal experience that you can now apply to other positions with 2 years, 3 years on down the line. And that's an important part of this too. There were some questions that came through about the replays. These study group replays are always available on YouTube immediately after we're done. I hit the stop button. They process them for a few minutes, and you can watch the replay right away. So that's something that's easy to do. And the audio version shows up sometime in the next day or so. Have those there. Let's keep going through this list of questions you have submitted. Some great questions, by the way. Thank you for submitting these. The other questions that are here, we got a lot on this list. Some are asking questions which are better than another. So same answer here. I'm not going to answer the same question multiple times. They are written in different ways as they come in. People will ask, should I do this cert or this cert? Would it be better? Should I even go down the road of this cert? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that one. It's really specific to you and what you're doing. So another idea, make your spreadsheet, figure it out. And it should be obvious once you do that. Other questions. Some folks were asking more information about our performance-based questions that we did today, the things that we broke down and kind of had an idea at least of performance-based questions that we had here. I gave you kind of an overview of that. And some people were asking about our CEU information. We did go through that, so you can watch the replay and catch when we did that one as well. Let's keep going through this list. There's a question here. This is a pretty good one. I'm going to give you a summary of the question, so I can't edit a few things out of this. But we have someone who submitted a question who says they've been working on practice exams. They're getting very good numbers on practice exams. They're taking their exam in 25 hours, just about a day. Should I still take it they're getting like a 94% on their practice exams. And they said, should I take it or should I study my weak points and reschedule? 94%. You should take this exam already. You're going to do fine. You're good. This is not a situation where you have to worry about getting 100% before you walk in the door. 90% and higher is very strong. You're going to do just fine on passing the exam at that point. So I see this a lot, though. We have this fear of taking the exam. Everybody does. I don't like to take exams. I'm always worried when the exam starts. There's always a concern. So I tell people all the time, don't be scared of the exam. The worst possible thing that could happen is you don't pass. We just take it again. That's it. Nobody died. There wasn't a car crash. There was not a tragedy. You just got to pay for it again. I guess that part is tragic. You have to pay for the exam again. So the tragedy of that, there is a little bit that you have to think about, but nobody was hurt. You're not working in medicine where if you plug in the wrong thing to the wrong place, it could be tragic. This is just an exam. That's it. And I have failed plenty of certification exams. So I guess you just get used to it after a while. You just walk in with the knowledge you have at 90% plus on your practice exams, you're good. Take it from the rest of us who are struggling with these practice exams. You're fine. You're going to crush it when you go in there. But I tell people all the time that is such an important part of the study process. You do get to a point where it's almost you can't make a decision because you are stuck thinking, if I just spend a little more time studying, I can get that up a couple more points. Well, you probably could, but do you really need to at this point? Probably not. So that paralysis, the analysis paralysis, that's a thing that happens. We spend so much time analyzing the situation and thinking about, should we study again? Should I just do one more test? Is there a topic I should go through again? You spend so much time on all of these different, should I do this? Should I do this? Should I do this? You end up not doing anything. So you start analyzing all of these different scenarios, and what happens is we end up not executing. So at some point, you have to execute. At some point, you have to make the decision to go take the exam. Go do it. Just go do it. If you're having to ask, am I really ready? I have found almost 100% of the time, that means you're ready. That's what that means. So go take it. You don't have to think about it anymore. You don't need my permission for it. You're doing 94% on your exams. Go take this exam already. Get your certification, put it in your pocket. Go get the job that's associated with it. You don't need anything more from me or anyone else. You are good to go. So certainly there. Shifting gears back to the exams, and let's talk a little bit about the A+ exams. I know this is the Network Plus Study Group, but in the after show, we talk about anything. For those familiar with the A+ exam, a new set of exams was released in March. So we are in the transition period right now where you have two separate exam types that you could take for the A+. You could take the 1100 series exams or the 1200 series exams. Both exams, I should make a diagram that shows both of the exams earn the same certification. They all have an arrow that points to the same cert. A lot of people think you get a newer cert when you take the newer exams. Nope, you don't. You get the same cert. There's nothing new about it. It's the same certification. The only difference is the questions they ask you to earn that same certification. So you get to decide. But the question here was, can I make a playlist for that new certification? So glad you asked. If you go to youtube.com/Professor Messer, I'll type that in so that you can see. Here's the website. Here's my page. I need to have a look at this. So you'll notice on my current CompTIA training courses, the first two links here are the CompTIA A+ 220-1201 and 220-1202. Playlists are already there. So if you're looking for the latest in A+, I should say the newer, I really don't want to call it that either. The newest alternative to A+ is right there. But if you're still studying, if you've been studying for months, go take the 1100 series exams. You got plenty of time. September 25th is the retirement date. Those exams are right here. Those playlists are right there. You can see them listed. And of course, we have our Network Plus playlist and our Security Plus playlist right there as well. So everything we have from a playlist for training courses is right there. And of course, we have our study groups. They're all listed here as well for the A+, 1101, 1102, Network Plus, and Security Plus. So you have ways to go back. And right here on the screen also, how to get an IT job without experience. We were just talking about that video. There it is. That'll tell you how to get through it. A 30-minute video. What was I thinking? It is 30 minutes. It's a long video, but as you are very familiar with my videos, there's not a lot of slack in there. There's not a lot of time where we're just sitting around chatting. This is all content 100% of the time. And set it to 1.5. Get through it in 20 minutes. You'll be good. It's not as bad as you think. There's a lot of good stuff in there, and you'll be able to step through it. That's what I would recommend. So if you need a playlist on the latest A+ exams, already there, already available for you. So absolutely, very useful. Make sure you do that. Have a look at what we got there. Might be helping you as well. So here's a question from Scott, who asks, hey, I got my A+, but it expired. And this is something also you should be aware of. When you earn your A+ certification, when you earn your Network Plus certification, when you earn your Security Plus certification, you've passed the exam, you walk out of the exam center, that certification is good for 3 years. That's it. At the end of 3 years, it expires. It is no more. It is an X certification. It's not at all well. It is gone at that point. There is no more of your A+ cert at that point. After 3 years, it is gone. There is no getting it back. It's like the snap. It just turns into dust and floats into the air, and now it's gone. We're not getting it back at that point. The blip has occurred. We're not able to somehow rope the cert back, which really talks about the second part of this question. Does that reactivate if I go get a Network Plus? No, it does not. Sorry. Frustratingly, it does not. It would be great if we had a way to kind of unsnap, to bring back from the blip. And now everybody's back again after time. Doesn't work that way with these certs, however. It does not. So if you go that 3 years and you do not renew yourself, you do not renew that cert during that 3-year period, at the end of the 3-year period, it will no longer exist. It will cease to exist. So that means if you would then go out and take your Network Plus, all you're going to have is your Network Plus. It does not somehow reactivate the A+. The only way for you to get that A+ certification again is to take the 2 A+ exams again. That's it. There's nothing you can do about that one. Now, I will tell you, if it just expired, like yesterday, please send a note to CompTIA Help, help.comptia.org. Scroll the bottom, and send a ticket in. Please send them a ticket and beg and plead. Sometimes the situations are right that they might be able to offer you some type of extension. Very rare, very unusual. It has happened before, but most of the time they will simply send you a note back saying, "It was 3 years. Brother, you had 3 years. Sorry, but we can't do anything at that point. You're going to have to now take the exams again." So I'm not above begging and pleading. I'm there. I'm more than happy. I can't believe this happened. I am so sorry. Is there anything we can do? I will do whatever you want. Just, can we please reinstate it? Sometimes they can make that happen. That is not even close to being a guarantee. And it's most likely not going to help you. But like I said, I have no problem begging. I'm fine with begging on things like that. If there's anything you could do that can help you. But most of the time, you'll just have to be stuck taking the exams again. I am so sorry. More questions coming in. We have some time left, so I think we can talk more about these. Let's keep going through the list and go through all of them. There is a lot of focus. In fact, we're sort of talking about this one. I think it's worth kind of going down this road a little bit. Hassan has sent this in and said, "Hey, I passed Security Plus thanks to your videos and practice exams. I have 2 years of experience in help desk. If I'm interested in the cloud, do you recommend a certain certificate for now? Will VMware be valuable to do now? Kind of lost. What should I be doing? Thank you." Well, since you are on a help desk, Hassan, there is probably in your organization where you work now a certain cloud that's used the most. So you might use maybe your organization has a big emphasis in AWS, the Amazon Web Services, the Amazon Cloud. Or maybe your company's a big Microsoft company and you do tons in the Azure Cloud. And if you're not sure, now's the time to ask the cloud folks in your organization. And if you're interested in cloud, make sure you're familiar with those folks. You probably know who they are. Send them a note. "Hey, I'm looking at getting a cloud cert. What would you recommend?" First, it does a couple of things. It tells the person in the cloud department, "Oh, we have someone we could potentially hire if we get an open slot, and we could just bring them over from the help desk. They already know the company. They already know how we work internally. They already know the people. We'll just bring them in." That's what the point of the help desk is, after all. And you're at about that point. If you've been 2 years in the help desk, you got to get out of there. It's time for you to leave. It's time you don't have to go home, but you cannot stay here. So that's the idea, is you need to get out of that help desk and into one of these groups. So start thinking right now. Should it be Windows? Should it be Linux? Should it be networking? Should it be cloud? Should it be database? What should it be? Find that thing and go talk to those people and go see what they recommend. "Hey guys, I'm interested in moving and doing more with the cloud. What do we use here? What would you recommend? Should I go get an Azure cert? Should I go get AWS cert?" There might be something different in cloud that you're doing. You might want to go ask them about that. They'll tell you. So that's what I recommend too, is figuring that out. Now, if you look around the industry, there's plenty of great cloud certs out there. Azure certainly, and Microsoft has tons of cloud certs. They moved practically all of their certifications over into the cloud side sort of overnight. You open up the Microsoft website a couple of years ago and everything had changed. All of their certs now were Azure certs, it seemed. Just they moved everything over to cloud-based. They made a big play for cloud, and it was pretty big. And so they have tons of certs for that. Okay, a lot of organizations might be looking for those. Have a look at the job postings they're putting out there and see what they're asking for. Other places, the AWS certs are also highly regarded and very popular. That might be another great place to look. And of course, CompTIA has Cloud Plus. They have Cloud Essentials, and other cloud things are coming down the line. There's other things happening. So I think that would be a great place to go to figure out cloud services and what you might want to do. Figure out what you're using now. Take advantage of that. That's pretty important. If you can get the knowledge of what you're already using, that will position you well for moving into that department. And not, if you don't have that, just take whatever the popular thing is from all the job postings you're looking at in your area. That's the one you should go after. So sort of the same answer I gave before, but this time more customized to where you happen to be. I think that would be a good place to go too. Let's keep going here into this list. Let's keep these going here. This is sort of a similar question. It's a little bit different here. And in fact, it's a good place we can kind of talk about what people have been saying about these things. This question, I have obtained my Security Plus. Will it be easier to get my Network Plus with this Security Plus knowledge? And I'm also going to take this question, I hope you don't mind, and I'm going to turn it around because I also get another version of this question, which is, I have passed my Network Plus. Will it be easier to get my Security Plus with that? And I've seen a number of different questions come through from people regarding the Network Plus and Security Plus exams. I've had some people say, oh, I looked at these exams. I looked at these exam objectives. Half of the Security Plus is the same material as Network Plus. And they think, oh, well, that will make it very easy when you get into Security Plus. Then what happens is you get into Security Plus and you realize less than 10% is the same. And it's actually less than that because the topics in Network Plus are focusing on these technologies from a networking perspective. These technologies on Security Plus are talking about these technologies from a security perspective. So it's not necessarily the same thing. They do not overlap that much. There's a very narrow overlap, certainly, between the two, but it is not something that you can really rely on as an advantage for the exam. So although you will see some Network Plus topics also appear in the Security Plus, some Security Plus topics also appear in the Network Plus, there's a little bit of synergy there. It's not enough to have any significant impact on how much time it takes to study for these exams. What makes sense if it did, right? These are very different independent exams from each other. These are not exams that you can easily overlap and compare against both of those. Now, I have not taken those two exams, specifically Network Plus and Security Plus, and done a deep dive analysis. For those of you that have gone to my site and seen the analysis we do of the differences between the previous Network Plus and the current Network Plus, the previous Security Plus and the current Security Plus, the previous A Plus and the current A Plus, we break it down for you. I give you Venn diagrams. I break down every topic on every section. You get to see the whole thing. But I don't do this between Network Plus and Security Plus because there's simply not enough to compare. It's certainly not 50%. It's not even really 10% at this point. I think it's a lot less than that. And so I will just give you a very broad perspective of don't rely on Security Plus helping you with Network Plus. Don't rely on Network Plus helping you with Security Plus. Although there are similar topics on both of the exams, it's not enough to make a huge difference. You're going to be learning all new topics anyway. Each exam is its own entity, has its own difficulty levels, has its own pieces of information that are important to know. And simply going to Security Plus or Network Plus and taking the other vice versa exam, it's not even useful. Doesn't even provide you with much overlap. So I would not rely on that for doing any of this. The one thing that does apply there, as I mentioned earlier, Network Plus touches everything. Really, networking touches everything. If you're on the network, then you're connected to the cloud. You're connected to the databases. You're connected to Linux. You're connected to Windows. You're connecting to the voice over IP system. You're connecting to all your big data repositories. You're connecting to everything. Everything is connected to each other. So knowing the networking part makes all the rest of these technologies easier to understand. So that's the only advantage you have is if you start with Network Plus, everything else becomes a little bit easier, just a little bit, because you know there's some networking on the cloud side, you know there's networking on the Linux side, you know there's networking on the Security Plus side, you know there's networking on the Windows side. But if you've already gone through the networking part of it, oh, that's so much easier now. You can kind of focus on what that particular technology does in that scenario rather than trying to, what is an IP address? What's a subnet mask? You're already past that. You already know that part. Let's now talk about how that is affected in Windows. Let's now talk about where we change that in Linux. Now let's talk about how we would configure that in the cloud. So that's the difference. Get the foundational stuff done with networking, and all of these others are just a little bit easier, just a sliver bit easier. It's not gonna solve any problems for you on these certifications. It's not going to be a dramatic improvement when you start studying for the new cert, but it helps just a little bit. I think that's a pretty good idea. We got time for one more question. Let's keep it in this list, and what we were doing yet. So let's take the other scenario. I like when we have follow-up questions to the questions. So let's do the follow-up question to the renewal one we had earlier, where A+ had expired and we took Network Plus. Does that bring back A+? It does not. All right, well, let's take another scenario from Jarell. It says, with that being said, if the A+ didn't expire yet, we were still in that 3-year window, and you take the Network Plus, would the A+ still expire? Well, to answer this question, I'm going to direct you out to the CompTIA website, CompTIA.org. There we go. We got Chris Evans is there working on his cert. Got some other folks there. Okay, let's go up to the top where it says Continuing Education. And we're just going to click the Continuing Education link. And in there, it says, choose your renewal path. So I don't need any latest updates from the bot. Choose your renewal path. So we're going to do that. We're going to choose our renewal path, and I'm going to choose to renew with a single activity. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I'm going to take a higher level CompTIA certification to renew my certification. We're going to click Learn More, and it presents us with this little tree, this little chart, this little stacked list. Now you have to take this one out the top and put in another peg, and then take this one and put the other peg, and then take that first one and move it over to the second peg. No, that's not what this is. This is not a Towers of Hanoi problem. This is a list showing us all the certs and what they renew. So in that question you asked me earlier was, now I don't have it up and running on my screen because we're on it right now. The question you asked earlier was, you have an A+. Let's say that you're 2 years into your A+. You have 1 year left on the cert. And now you take and you pass your Network Plus. Well, if we go to Network Plus on this list and we click it, if you take Network Plus, it fully renews A+. If you take the Security Plus, it fully renews the Network Plus and the A+. If you took the Linux Plus, it renews the A+. So you can go through this list to see if I took that cert, what does it renew? If you took the A+, fully renews nothing. That's the beginning. So just to give you a perspective. So in that question you asked, you took the Network Plus, it fully renews the A+. So let's even take it a completely different. Let's take it all the way to the extreme. You took you passed your last A+ exam 2 years and almost a day before 3 years. You're a day before it expires. You're now almost to 3 years. We got it all the way to the end of its expiration. And you walk in and you pass your Network Plus. You study for the Network Plus and you pass it. It fully renews your A+. It renews all of the lower level certs that apply, in this case, the single cert of A+. It renews that A+ exam to now renew starting with the date that you passed your Network Plus exam. So now 3 years after that point, both your Network Plus and your A+ are now valid, and they now renew on the same day and expire, on the same day. They don't renew on the same day. They expire on the same day at that point, 3 years down the line. Notice that you only have to pass the highest level cert to renew all the others. So let's say you have the A+ and the Network Plus. Maybe you took them at different times. Maybe you took the Network Plus first, then you took the A+. Not the best way to do it, because now the A+ doesn't renew the Network Plus, and you took the Network Plus first, so it didn't renew your A+ because you didn't have the A+ yet. You with me? So you could do them the other way. There's a reason we do them in a particular order. But now let's say you've got your Network Plus and your A+. They're in the middle of their 3-year period. They're still valid. Then you go out and take the Security Plus and you pass it. It now renews your Network Plus and A+ and brings their 3-year renewal right up to the date of today where you just passed your Security Plus exam. And now all 3 of those will expire on the same day. So there you go. That's just one of the ways that you can renew your certification. I have a video on renewals. You may not want to take a higher level cert. You may want to renew your certification some other way. There are about 4 or 5 different ways that you can do it these days, and I go through each one of those and explain the advantages and disadvantages in my video that's in this YouTube video description on how to renew your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus certification in just a few hours. In just a few hours? How would you do that? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's in the video. You take the Cert Master CE. There you go. I answered it already. You don't have to go through anything else to worry about that part of it. That's the deal. So yes, if your A+ is still valid and you pass your Network Plus, you've now renewed the A+ for a new 3-year period starting on the day where you passed your Network Plus. Which is kind of nice. I know we're past the top of the hour, but we could probably find one more, right? We can squeeze another good question in. There's a couple of ways. There's a couple of questions we got here at the end that I think would be useful to talk about. I'll just sort of consolidate all of them into a single question that I ask here. We're working on these things. The questions come in and people ask, should I watch a video course? Should I get a book? Should I take some practice exams? Should I get some hands-on? And how should I do that? What is the important part of doing those? And I think all of those are useful study materials that teach you things in different ways. And that's why I always tell you it's more than one thing. On our site, we call this the WRAP process, WRAP. So I want you to watch a video series, watch some video training where you can watch someone using these commands at the command line, where you can watch somebody moving through the user interface and clicking on things and changing the IP addresses and changing the way you connect to the network. Watching is important. So that's the W in our WRAP. The R is reading a good book. Although books and videos have similar information, they teach you different information in different ways. Reading is a different type of input than watching. So I tell people all the time, don't rely on just videos. Go get a good book. Books also have a lot of detail in them. Because of the written form, you're able to get information in a different way. It's different than watching a video form. And vice versa, reading a book is not the same as watching somebody perform those on the screen. So there's a nice watching a demonstration process. So you kind of need both. So there's the W and the R. The A is applying what you've learned, ideally with more hands-on. When you're sitting in a command prompt and you run the NS lookup command and you watch the results go by, there's some type of thing that happens in your brain that kind of links together that physical motion of typing that in with the information that you're seeing on the screen. Kind of locks in the synapses. Something's going on there where it's almost like for people that play a musical instrument, there's a point where you're playing a piece and you don't even have to think about what you're doing with your fingers, what you're doing with your armature, what you're doing with the instrument. It just sort of happens because you're now have this muscle memory of playing the piece, the way the air is being spent, the way that you're hitting the keys on the keyboard, the way the drumsticks and where you're going in the set. There's something about that. And I think that doing hands-on gives you that physical connection to the content. So A, applying that becomes important as well. And P, the last part is practice exams. So there's the 4 things that I think would give you the best possible chance for passing your exam. And on our website, I've got options for all of those. For watching the videos, we're obviously covered. And if you look at our website, I like the CompTIA books. The Cert Master Practice is good. Their labs are amazing. So you've got options for all of those parts of the WRAP process. And I think all of those are useful. It's not a requirement. Some people have a real problem with reading a book, that it's just, there's an issue there. They just don't like it. Maybe they don't find a good book that really connects with them. They just don't want to use a book. They would prefer watching the videos. All right, so we don't do the R part of the WRAP process, but maybe we also do more hands-on. Maybe we supplement that with some additional questions. Maybe we watch more than one video course. There are ways to supplement this so that you may not be using all of the aspects of that, but you're still getting the benefits of all of those by adding in those other pieces. So that's why I tell people, don't use that as a must-have. Use it as a like-to-have and pick the things that work best for you, because everybody studies differently. Everybody has a different thing that they like. Some people like books more than they like videos. Some people like videos much more than they like books. I can't make that decision for you. You know what fits best for you. Find the one that fits best. Our goal here is to get the certification. I do not care how you get there. I do not care the process you take. You don't even have to watch my videos if you don't want to. Did I say that? I didn't mean it. But it's possible. You could watch other videos. You could read another book. The point is get the cert. Earn the certification, put it in your pocket, stick it on your resume, add it to your CV, go get the jobs. That is our point. We want you to get a job or get a better job. The only way to do that is by using whatever method works best for you. And I recognize that everybody has a different way of doing things. Find the way that works best for you. Go get the cert. That is the point. I think a lot of times we kind of forget this. I have a lot of people come to me and say, yeah, but I want to learn more about this networking topic, or I want to learn more about that networking topic. But those aren't in the exam objectives. You will not be asked about those topics on the exam. Yeah, but I want to learn about them. You can learn about them after you get your certification. Focus on the objectives. Always, always, always go back to the objectives. I say this all the time, that these objectives are the most important part of your certification process, because this is your checklist. Now you can go to each one of these bullets and really understand all of the things you need to know. They're not going to deviate from this list. You now know everything that could possibly be asked in section 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. You've got them all here. So you can go through everything through section 1.8. Now you know everything that could possibly be asked about section 1, domain 1 on the exam. Now you go to domain 2 and you do the same thing, and domain 3 and domain 4. You just keep doing it. Go to domain 5 and finish it up. That's the focus. So when I tell people, go get those objectives, go use them, they're your checklist, they're your guide, they're your validator, they're a good way to test yourself, and they're a good way to really understand if you are ready to take the exam. That's what you should use, are the exam objectives. Focus on the objectives, stick to the objectives. Don't let anything deviate you from the objectives. If it does, they are wasting your time, because you're not going to be asked anything else in the exam except what's on these objectives. Very, very, very rarely, CompTIA will ask you a question or two on your exam which suddenly don't have anything to do with the objectives. Well, it turns out they do that to see how you'll answer something you've never studied for. That's really what those are there for, and they're not graded when they ask you those things. Through the years, we've found that out. They don't tell us directly, they found that out. Now, one of the things that people tend to focus on here is in the exam objectives is a section that says, yeah, Professor Messer, but it says the list of examples provided in bulleted format are not exhaustive lists. Other examples of technologies, processes, or tasks pertaining to each objectives may also be included on the exam, although not listed or covered in this objectives document. And this is what I find a lot of people going back to and saying, well, you say don't go outside the objectives, but even CompTIA tells you they go outside the objectives. And I have to tell them, actually, they don't tell you that. They say that they may go outside the objectives. Guess what? They don't. They don't. This is the lawyers writing lawyer talk to protect them against somebody coming back and saying, wait, I studied all this stuff, and you asked me a question about this other networking topic that has nothing to do with anything, and I didn't pass, and it's your fault. Well, we told you that we could ask you that. But this is really just there so that they tell you they have an out. Legally, they have an out, and that's what the out is. But in practice, for those of you looking at reality, there is what's on the page, and then there's what reality is. The reality is they stick to the objectives, and I still stick to mine that says, if you know every single one of these bullets in these objectives, and you can talk about every single one of them and explain the purpose of this technology and how you would use it, then you're going to pass your exam. That's it. I'm not going to say I'm going to guarantee you pass your exam. There are no guarantees in life, but you're well positioned. You can walk in and pass the exam at that point. It's everything but a guarantee. at that point. That's how good this list is. So use the objectives. They are very valuable. They're more valuable than I think people give them credit for. And that's why I constantly tell you throughout the study group, it comes from the objectives. We're doing questions from the objectives. We're focusing on the objectives. There's a reason we focus on the objectives, because CompTIA focuses on the objectives. That's the whole point of that. Hopefully that's hit home a little bit, because I've only said it a million times in the live stream. So there you go. I think that's probably the best way to do it. We'll just keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it till you're tired of listening to me. And then I'll keep repeating it a little bit more, because that's how important it is. Well, I think that brings us to the end of another study group. I can't believe we got through another one. What a great one we had. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your Q&A in the first hour and helping us answer those questions. Thank you for the questions you submitted in the second hour. Remember that we have our Security Plus study group next week on Wednesday of next week, 12 noon Eastern time, same as usual. So we'll pass through that one. And of course, if you're ever wondering when the next live event is going to be, we always keep our calendar up to date on the website at professormesser.com/calendar. We also have an events channel in our Discord. You can go to our Discord and click on events, and it will also have those. If I ever change a date, sometimes I do. We move things around. Chaos follows me everywhere I go. If I do have to change a date, then I immediately change those two places. So you always know you're looking at the most updated dates by going to professormesser.com/calendar, clicking the events link at the top of the Professor Messer website, or clicking the events link on our Discord. They're all the same, and I always make sure we keep those up to date. Thank you so much for joining us. We always have such a good time with these. Thanks for spending some time with us today. We'll see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Thanks, everybody.